Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another midweek COVID update. Just to make an announcement, this will be our last COVID midweek update for 2021. So for the next couple of weeks, we'll have to take a break, and we'll come back hopefully on the 5th of January, Wednesday, 5th of January. I'm going to try and make the 5th of January, but if not, it'll be the 12th of January. Please watch the space, and we'll let you know if either the 5th or the 12th we start again. So where are we with Omicron? I'm sure a lot of people are anxious to know. And I think that's really what I'm going to devote this last update on. Okay, let me take you back to our usual slide, which we showing our first, second, and third waves. This is a slide that's a week old, but in terms of Omicron, week is a long time. But just to illustrate, one of the striking things which has happened is that, if you remember, we were looking really for our fourth wave to start more or less around the end of this month, maybe even into January, and hopefully at least give us some kind of break, because before the fourth wave, we were at a very, very, very good space. But unfortunately, this came out very much sooner than we expected. Now, normally there's between the waves about a 100-day interval between the waves. Let me get my pointer up. 100 days between waves. And what we're seeing now really is maybe even half of that, about 50 days. So it's really come on us a lot sooner. And now we're starting our fourth wave coming up over there. So we look at the dashboard and cast our minds back to previous COVID updates. On the 3rd of November, we were at 169, a very low level of daily cases, 169 daily cases reported. 17th of November, about a month ago, in fact, less than a month ago, 273. And then last week, up to 4,373. Today, in fact, actually yesterday, reported today, 13,147. These figures do fluctuate, so we shouldn't put too much on the actual precise figures. There is some kind of fluctuation due to reporting artifacts. So if yesterday, in fact, it went down to 6,800 odd. The day before that, 18,000. So that's actually why we do look at the 7-day moving average, and we average it out over 7 days to get a better picture of the epidemic. But really, where the epidemic is really centered on is the Gauteng province, illustrated by this graph over here. This is the red line over here. And we can see the sharp increase, particularly in the Gauteng province, starting to appear now in the other provinces, the Western Cape and KZN. I'll show you just now in terms of hospital admissions. But in terms of cases, in fact, it's spread throughout the country, and all the provinces are now starting to show uptick in cases, in notified cases. But clearly, the Gauteng province is leading by far. It's actually interesting if you look at the upward trajectory of this Omicron wave, this fourth wave, and compare it to our previous waves. You can see that it's very, very much steeper in terms of daily cases. Again, a 7-day average in the Gauteng province, steeper than even the Delta wave, which really was our most significant wave up to now, and certainly much steeper than the Beta wave in the first one. So a very much more rapidly increasing number of cases, a rapidly increasing epidemic wave. And with other parameters as well, the tests, the percentage of tests which are sent to laboratories which come back positive. You remember that's quite a good marker of the extent of the epidemic, also sharply increasing. And the weekly hospital admissions, this is adjusted for a delay in reporting, so not quite as high as this, but still showing again a steep increase in the number of hospitalized cases. So Omicron has certainly got a slightly different characteristic in terms of its epidemic curve. It's going to be a much sharper epidemic wave. Also seen in terms of the percentage positivity. Again, you see the sharp increase here in the percentage positivity. Maybe we'll see it better on this graph over here. You remember we went right down to 1.1, the lowest level ever since the pandemic began at the end of October. And now increased quite markedly up to 25%. And you can see it on this graph as well. And the other parameter we look at, which is a good marker, and that's the extent of the amount of virus, what you call the viral load, the amount of virus which we find in, for example, wastewater and wastewater surveillance. And Tshwane, which really is the kind of epicenter of the epicenter of the Gauteng province, which is the epicenter of the country in terms of the outbreak. Again, a lot of virus in wastewater, reflecting a lot of virus in the community. And also in Johannesburg as well, steep increase in this particular site and that site as well, and also, of course, in Tshwane as well. So it is quite clear Delta is now going to be our driver of our fourth, sorry, not Delta, Omicron is going to be the driver of our fourth wave. Remember, we started our second wave with Beta, our third wave with Delta, and this is Omicron, which is now displacing in the country, in South Africa, certainly seems to be displacing Delta. This is now a fitter virus, and we're going to come to it just now in terms of its increased transmissibility or infectiousness or contagiousness, and also increased ability to escape from immunity, either natural immunity from infection or vaccine-induced immunity. And I'll come to that now. So these two things are making Omicron certainly a more fit virus, and it's going to replace in South Africa and maybe even globally as well. We have to watch this space. Now, Omicron, in fact, has spread around the world. It is found in every continent, with the exception of Antarctica, in North America, South America, extensively in Europe, and just about every European country now has reported isolating Omicron, Australia, Asia, and so on. There are some countries haven't reported yet, but I think it's a matter of time before it spreads and really involve just about every country in the world. Now, let's look at Omicron itself. This is the spike protein of Omicron variant. This is the spike protein of the Delta. Remember the spike protein, the outermost protein of the virus that the virus uses to establish itself onto receptor sites on the cell, the respiratory tract cell, and establish infection. And you can see that the shape is quite different. But more importantly, you look at the mutations. These are the mutations. These letters R and G represent the individual amino acids which are substituted in the actual mutation. And Delta, which up to now was really a kind of a Superman of mutations up to now compared to previous variants, you see it's relatively few mutations in the spike protein. You look at Omicron and you're dazzled by the amount of mutations. This is Swiss cheese, and it's really what kind of totally surprised and concerned. I'm not going to say alarmed, but certainly quite seriously concerned virologists looking at this picture. And you can see why it has. This is quite a striking picture showing the large amount of mutations in spike protein, probably going now close on 35, certainly much more than 30. Many of them still need to be defined as such, and over 50 in the virus itself. Now, how does this now translate to the changes of the personality, the changes of the property of the virus? And this is really what I want to take you through now. First of all, we do know it's a highly transmissible virus. And even now, it's relatively still preliminary stages, but we are accumulating more and more information. And what's really become apparent, what's markedly apparent, that this Omicron is a lot more contagious than the Delta. It may even be as high as doubly contagious as the Delta. And we measure it, as I've shown as I mentioned a number of times, by what's called the reproductive number, the R value. And the R value is climbing. We measure it in cases and admissions to hospital, but cases are certainly the advancing part of the wave. And this is now climbing to up to 3, which is the highest level that is ever reached in the pandemic. So this now appears to be the most contagious, the most transmissible variant to date. How is that looking like in what is causing in terms of disease? And I've shown you graphs like this just to update it. This is the national hospital surveillance throughout the country. And you can see that there's quite a marked increase, a doubling by week. We are now in week 49. This is just, of course, the lag over here. From 46 to 47 to 48, doubling week by week, nationally overall. And of course, in Gauteng, even more so, even a steeper increase, smaller numbers, but a steeper increase. But fortunately, the number of individuals in high care and intensive care is relatively low compared to the overall hospital admissions. So the great majority are just simply being observed in the general ward, some of them just on room air, some of them with oxygen, but relatively few in high care and fewer also in intensive care as well. So Gauteng is certainly leading, and that's really what's kind of modifying the national figures as well. The other provinces, Western Cape, not yet showing any marked increase, a little bit of an increase, but certainly nothing approaching Gauteng. The Eastern Cape starting to increase. KwaZulu-Natal is increasing quite markedly now, but these are small numbers and a little bit difficult to kind of put too much emphasis on how much it is increasing by. But certainly, this is going to increase throughout the country, and we'll see that. But it's interesting if you look at these graphs over here, because what they do is that they compare in the Gauteng province the Omicron wave against the Delta wave in terms of patients admitted to hospital. And you can see, yeah, even though the Omicron wave is steeper, the overall numbers are much lower in terms of hospitalized patients admitted to the ICU, hospitalized patients even more severe on ventilators, much lower than what we saw in the Delta wave. So this has really seemed to be what's a pattern which is developing, that much more patients, much more transmissible, but milder in terms of the numbers of individuals being hospitalized. But what also has been quite a striking feature is that there are much younger individuals who are being infected, and to some extent also hospitalized. So these orange bars over here represent the fourth wave, which is Omicron driven, compared to the blue, the third wave, which is Delta driven. And you can see, and these are the age groups here, 0 to 4 years of age, far more cases with Omicron as compared to Delta. And you can see it all the way up to young adults, that much more younger individual being infected than infected and affected than compared to the Delta. And then when you get to the older adults, again, it is the Delta, which got more individuals being, even now with this highly transmissible Omicron, more individuals in the Delta as compared to Omicron. So I'm now going to give you some data which has come hot off the press, was released this morning, and that's looking at the vaccine escape. In other words, individuals who have been vaccinated, how efficient is the neutralizing antibodies elicited by vaccines? How effective is it in neutralizing Omicron? And we know from observations that there have been so many vaccine breakthroughs, individuals who've been vaccinated, who've got infected, fortunately, the vast majority mildly, but who've still got infected despite having 2 courses of Pfizer or 1 course of Johnson and are still getting infected. Some individuals who've had 3 courses, three doses of vaccine and are still being infected. So this has just been released now. It's been studied. You can see a large number of individuals from many institutions. The main one coming from Durban, from the Africa Health Institute in Durban. Alex Segal is the senior lead in that. And what it's showing actually quite dramatically and not unexpectedly, that individuals who've been vaccinated, when you compare it to the ancestral strain, this is ancestral strain D614G, the original variant, compared to Omicron, there's a vast decrease in the ability of post-vaccine or post-infection antibodies being able to neutralize Omicron. Now, 41 point, up to 41.4 times reduction in neutralizing antibodies. This is very significant, much more than any of the other variants up to now. Interesting enough, if one has been infected and then subsequently vaccinated, we know that you get a very good immune response. Then even though with this large amount of reduction, you still get reasonable immunity. If you've only had vaccine, however, and you come across Omicron, you've got a marked reduction. In fact, these are small numbers which are looked at. There's one individual, there's no neutralization whatsoever despite being vaccinated. There's an individual that only had vaccine and not infection. So that is also there's another study done in the Karolinska Institute in Sweden, as well as individuals in Cape Town, and again showing similar. They found between 1 and 23 reduction in neutralizing antibodies. So that is really sums it up. Let's now look at how these properties have changed. First of all, transmissibility. This is a highly transmissible virus, the most transmissible variant that we had up to now, more transmissible, at least 50%, maybe even twice as transmissible as our previous variant, the Delta variant. It is, as I've shown you now, a variant or a virus which has got very good ability to escape neutralizing antibodies, which are produced both by vaccine, and there's another study done also, the results released fairly recently, showing that even there's immune escape from individuals from natural infection. So natural infection as well as vaccine-induced immunity, there's quite good immune escape by this virus. However, the one good news is that it appears so far, and I must really stress this is provisional, early days, but so far the disease due to Omicron overall seems to be milder than the variants preceding it. But I must stress there still have been hospitalized cases. There have been individuals in ICU, as I showed you earlier, individuals on ventilator, and of course there has been a mortality as well. But compared to the previous variant, it's looking like, and provisionally looking like, causing a milder disease. And lastly, there seems to be a downward trend in terms of the age of individuals that are infected. This may be due to the vaccine phenomena, because of course the percentage of uptake in the teenage age group has been very low. Less than 10% of teenagers so far have had the one dose of vaccine. We're about to get a second dose released, but so far it's been very poor. And of course, under 12 years old, you're not vaccinating at all. So this may be why the younger age group is being affected more. It may be possibly a property of the virus itself. So I'm going to stop there, go to some of the questions very quickly. I'll just do some of them. I've been asked about the booster shot for older individuals. That is coming soon, hopefully. Individuals over the age of 50, 6 months after getting their last primary vaccination, will be offered a booster. Hopefully that will be coming soon, as I say. And then another question actually it was 3 questions from the same individual. As cases are rocketing, why are the shuls still open and simple gatherings? As you know, the Chief Rabbi's office has its own medical board. I'm not involved in that at all. So they would need to take that decision about the shuls. I do know that there's one relatively big shul in Johannesburg which has closed down. I think we'll need to watch the space. But I just need to emphasize, if shuls do stay open, they do need to rigorously enforce the non-pharmaceutical interventions, the infection prevention protocols really must be so strictly adhered to now, particularly with this highly contagious virus. Why is there a delay in authorizing booster doses for the over 60s? As I just mentioned just now, it is coming fairly soon. And then, are children under 2 years old more threatened with this new variant? Again, I've shown you the graph that even children younger than 2 years of age are being affected. Again, mainly. There have been some more serious cases in Johannesburg. We know of some. but these were with comorbidities. And then lastly, there's a question about contacts. This is a case someone had breakfast with somebody who was exposed to an individual who tested positive. Does the first individual need to quarantine? Again, I've emphasized a few times, we don't quarantine contacts of contacts, because otherwise the chain then becomes too extended. It's really only contacts of individuals that are infected who need to quarantine, not contacts of contacts. So I'll close off there, and thank you very much for watching and listening over the past year, 2021. I'll wish you all have a good holiday, a good break, but please stay safe. Please, even if you've been vaccinated, as I've shown you up to now, vaccination doesn't totally prevent you from getting infected. You don't want to get infected, even if it's mild, and pass it on to somebody. So please adhere to all these infection prevention procedures. It's really so important. Try and have a good holiday, have a good break, and we'll see you hopefully on the 5th of January. If not, it'll be on the 12th of January next year. Goodbye. All the best.